This right here is my M1 Max MacBook Pro that I got in October of 2021, and it is by far the best computer I've ever had. However long it's been now, many years later, hundreds and hundreds of days later, I want to tell you about this computer, why I think it's amazing, why it's the best computer I've ever used, thoughts on upgrading computers, and maybe why many of us probably don't need new computers when we think we do. If you want to know the specific specs, this one has a 2TB SSD internally, which has been great for video editing, 32 gigs of RAM, and it is the 10-core Apple M1 Max processor. So they don't make this computer anymore. The M1 computers are totally phased out for 2, 3, and 4 and beyond, but this computer works just as good, if not even maybe a little bit better than the day that I got it. This was the first version of the redesigned MacBook Pros that kind of went back to some older designs. It's a little bit fatter, it has more ports than the other ones, and you know, a bigger battery and all that. And importantly, let's talk about some of these ports. The two USB-C Thunderbolt ports are great. Obviously headphones, there's nothing new about these. MagSafe returning, I think is awesome. This is something that people were asking for a really long time, the magnetic charger that just pops in there, and if it gets tugged, it just kind of pops out, which is great if you're like me and you have dogs that sometimes run around and then they grab your power cable and your computer doesn't go sliding off the kitchen counter. That's always a really nice thing. MagSafe was something that was on Apple computers for a long time, and then it went away in favor of just USB-C charging, and then it came back with these ones. And it was something that while it was gone, people were really like, I wish MagSafe was back, it was the best. Since its return, I've actually seen a lot of people in the always rational online community say that, oh, we admit it, we were wrong with MagSafe, we don't need it, I never use it. I've seen people post polls where they're like, do you actually use MagSafe on a MacBook or not? And so many people say they never use it. I use it all the time, and if you don't use it, here's why I recommend you do. In addition to just the safety of MagSafe, boop, it's really, really nice. It charges things really fast, and it doesn't take a USB-C port. To me, that's really crucial. This is a computer that has 3 USB-C ports, and if I need to use one of them for charging, that's not always ideal. I have this thing, you know, it sometimes is just like this, where it's just the computer by itself and I'm editing here. But other times I'll be working with it and it has like, you know, it looks like a life support system coming out of it because there's just so many cables and dongles and hubs and things. So every available port is really important to me, and being able to just have power be its own separate thing in a really effective form factor has been amazing. Plus, when you get MagSafe, you just end up with like, it's very easy to have a long power cable instead of, I don't know, having to go buy a long USB-C or whatever. It just works. Wasn't that Apple's slogan for a while? It just works. So that's kind of nice. On the other side of the computer, there's another USB-C, and then there's an SD card reader, which I use almost every single day, because even though my cameras can take, you know, type A express cards or whatever, those are really expensive, and I don't want to deal with card readers, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything by not using them, so I just use regular SD cards, and that means I can just put them right here. So SD is the best D. And then we've got HDMI out, which again, I use this all the time as well. Basically, like, I use every port on this computer almost every day, if not at least 4 to 5 times a week. If anything, I want more, not less, and I'm worried. Thing that I'm worried is now that this design has been around for several years, Apple's gonna go back to their thing of like, now we made it thinner and simpler, and they're gonna get rid of ports and things again, and I don't want that to happen. I try to take really good care of my computers. I know I'm waving it around like this in the video, but I'm holding onto it very firmly, and it's not something that I would normally do. I don't normally walk around waving my computer, believe it or not. This thing is held up really well. If I open it up, you know, the screen is fine. The only real signs of wear, and I don't know if you can see on here, are the keyboard. You can kind of see the shine and the reflectiveness on the keyboard, which that is something that's just going to happen with keyboards in general. Although I do have this Logitech keyboard that is only, actually, this is older than this. I got this before I got this computer, and it does not have anywhere near the amount of shine or wear and tear. The keys on the MacBook getting kind of worn in and shiny and stuff, that is something that literally started happening within the first 2 weeks of owning this computer. This is also not my first MacBook, and that's something that's happened on every MacBook that I've ever had. I don't know what Apple's using to coat their keys with the matte finish, but use something stronger like what Logitech is using here, because that's just, it makes your keyboard look greasy and dirty even when it's totally clean. And speaking of cleaning the keyboard, this is something, I made a YouTube short about this a couple years ago, and it's the only thing I've ever had to turn comments off of because it got so toxic and crazy, but I felt like it was a helpful thing. So maybe I can actually explore this in more detail here. I'm someone who likes to keep my computer clean, but if you try to just like wipe down the keyboard, then you start pushing a bunch of things, you kind of open windows, you accidentally rename files, folders, open, close applications. It's not ideal. You can log out of the computer and just go to the login screen and then wipe the keys. But depending on how you do it, if you accidentally hit return too many times, you could potentially lock yourself out of the computer because you entered like the wrong password too many times. So one of my favorite applications that I've ever found is actually called Keyboard Clean Tool. If I open that up, as soon as I open it, it just locks the keyboard. If you had a Touch Bar MacBook Pro at some point, or you still have one and you've used Better Touch Tool, this is the same people that made that. So it's a super simple application. It works really well, and basically it just locks the keyboard. So now if I want to clean the keyboard, all I do is just spray, I have invisible glass, but whatever. Just spray cleaner, scrub all the schmuckus out of the keyboard, and then I can click out. It doesn't lock the mouse pad or the trackpad, it just locks the keyboard, and now I have a clean keyboard. So even though there's still some shine on the keyboard, it is perfectly clean. Like I said, I made a YouTube short that kind of highlighted that because it's a really quick way if you're like me and you've been sort of annoyed at trying to clean your MacBook's keyboard. The number of people who say like, just turn the computer off. Here's the thing, you're right. I would like to just turn the computer off, but if you've ever used a recent MacBook Pro, every button is a power button. It has a power button with Touch ID, and I love that. That works great. Really like having Touch ID right here. But once you turn the computer off, if I open it or press any key, they will all turn on the computer. So you shut down the computer and then you start scrubbing the keyboard, and it's instantly going to turn on and start typing in wrong passwords and do weird things or accidentally enter weird startup menus or whatever. So turning off the computer, not a solution. I know that's dumb. I don't think every key should be a power key. I'm not defending that decision by Apple. That's just a reality of the thing. So yes, you need a separate app that locks your keyboard so you can clean it as often as you want with no problems. I found the 14-inch form factor to be my personal favorite. I did have a 16-inch MacBook Pro before this, an Intel i9 one, and that was just like, it was really nice to have the screen real estate, but putting that in bags, traveling with it, it was just like way too bulky for me. And I had a 13-inch MacBook prior to that, and I really love that size and that form factor. So it's really cool that, actually, I can show you. This is my 11-year-old 13-inch MacBook Pro, and you can kind of see there are the exact same size, basically. Actually, yeah, they are the exact same size. And this computer, the old MacBook, SD card, USB, multiple, well, these were Thunderbolt at the time, and then USB, headphones, MagSafe. So basically, this is just an updated version of this, which this computer still works. It just like is very, very slow. So even if I try to just use it for like a web browser, it's just, unfortunately, it is obsolete, even though it still powers on and works just fine. I definitely got my money's worth out of this one. My Intel 16-inch MacBook, I thought was great. I spent so much money on that computer, and seriously, within like 2 years, it was slow, it was super loud. That's why I went to my M1 Mac Mini, because I needed something quiet to do like recording and streaming and online teaching that I was doing during the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. And the Intel MacBook was just way too loud and crazy to do that. And then this is sort of the best of everything. It's, more powerful than the Mac Mini, but every bit is silent. The fan has come on a handful of times ever since I've had it, really. Like, it is such a quiet computer and it works so incredibly well. And it has the form factor that I love with more power because it's got a slightly bigger screen than this one did. Here you can see the difference between the 14-inch and the 13-inch physical displays. They are basically the same physical size, except this one has such much bigger bezels than this one does that you end up with a lot more screen real estate over here. I know this is like old news at this point, but the notch is not a big deal. I don't know, if you've used one of these computers, maybe you've realized that it just kind of blends in and it doesn't affect anything and you never even think about it. At least that's the case for me. No problems at all with the notch there. I'd rather have the extra screen space up at the top than a big bezel like that. And then talking about performance, obviously that's probably one of the more important things when it comes to a computer. That's where this has been my main computer. I use my M1 Mac Mini for all my streaming and podcasting because that's kind of in my desk setup over there, and that works great. I use this for everything else. I do stream with this sometimes, but this has edited basically every video I've made since I've got it, do everything in 4K. I've made courses with it, do graphic design stuff with it. I really use it a lot, put it through its paces, even use it for gaming a little bit. And it is just like such an awesome computer, and it works really, really well. If you've seen any of my videos about the M series Macs or anyone else's, you kind of know how incredibly powerful those M series processors are. And going from Intel to the M1 was like the biggest leap there could be. Going from, you know, M1, M2, M3, M4, and then the variations between, it's like, it's not as drastic of a change, but that original leap to M series is just unreal, especially for something like I use Ecamm Live a lot, and that works really well on both of these computers. I definitely do notice a difference between the M1 Max and the base model M1 on my Mac Mini. The base model Mac Mini, once I started trying to edit 4K footage from my Sony cameras, I got the computer before I had 4K cameras. It's totally fine with the 1080 workflow, no problem. It can do 4K, but it starts to get a little bit slow, and I wouldn't say stuttery, but just takes like longer to render and stuff in Final Cut Pro. Whereas this, I don't even have to think about it. I can throw in tons of tracks of 4K footage and just start immediately scrubbing through, playing everything in real time. Exporting is super quick. I'm sure that on a newer version, a newer computer, it would be a little bit faster, but I have zero complaints. Like, I don't want a new computer. I don't want to upgrade a new computer. I have zero need to. And that's really why, you know, all these years later after having this, I was just sitting at the kitchen table using this computer the other day, and I was just thinking like, God, I love this computer. Like, I enjoy using it so much, and it's helped me do so many things that I couldn't have done without it. It's like, it's really amazing what something so small is capable of doing. The 2 terabyte internal drive has been great for me. That's like the perfect size for me because I like to keep all of my footage for projects on here while I'm editing. So I import all the raw footage, create the Final Cut projects and libraries and all that, edit on here, and then when I'm done with the project, I offload it onto a NAS server that we have for like archiving and backing stuff up. So pretty much the only stuff that lives on here are like applications that I need, some, you know, files and assets that I use in every video, and then whatever I'm currently working on. So usually, and I could even see right now, usually there's about 1.5 terabytes of free space on here still. So it's not doing the thing where it's weirdly cluttering stuff up and taking up space, and it works great. I love it. I love being able to not have to connect external drives and things to edit off of. I definitely wouldn't want to get less than 2 terabytes on any computer in the future. 32 gigs of RAM has been great. It works awesome on Final Cut, on Photoshop, Adobe Audition, Ecamm Live, Zoom, multiple versions of all those things running at the same time. That's really the thing that blew my mind with the M series Macs, and I've talked about this in like my Mac Mini videos, is with my old Intel Mac, especially when I was teaching online, as soon as I opened up Zoom, and then especially if I opened up Ecamm Live, which I used for like running my cameras through and adding graphics and stuff, it would sound like it was blasting off into outer space. I literally had to connect it to an external display and put the computer under my desk to hide the sound because it was so obnoxiously loud. It got to the point where I couldn't record podcasts with it because it's just like a leaf blower in the room with me. It became such a hassle, and it was getting so slow, whereas the M series computers are just so quiet, like 99% of the time. Every once in a while the fan turns on. I use Descript for video captions, and Descript is the thing that like absolutely kills the fan. I don't know why Descript is so inefficient, but whenever that's running, the fan turns on like crazy, then I close Descript and it goes away. So Descript is not very nondescript with its sounds fan stuff. The fact that on an M series computer I could be editing videos, have tons of browser tabs open, have something like Ecamm, video conferencing software, I can just open up as much software as I want and there are no problems, is just phenomenal to me. Looking through, I've still got 93% optimal battery health after 3.5 years with the computer. So that is pretty darn good. I do use optimized charging, which used to really annoy me when it would just go to 80% and not further. But then I was like, oh, I think you know what you're doing to keep yourself, you know, optimal. So I'm gonna let it do that. And that actually seems like it has made a huge difference. I did mention gaming on here. Last summer, I got into the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, and I've been playing that on here a lot, and it actually works quite well. which is great because I'm not someone who would normally consider myself a gamer, so I didn't want to buy something else to play. It worked great, a little bit of stuttering here and there, and then eventually I have an Xbox Series 1S, like the low-end new Xbox that had just been kind of sitting around for a long time, and I realized, oh, that is a significant step up in terms of just overall performance. But I didn't know any better. So aside from like a little bit of stuttering here or there, graphics quality, gameplay quality, enjoying, like, I could play that on here, which is a pretty taxing game. Now, I know something that pops up anytime I talk about Apple computers, maybe anytime anybody talks about Apple computers, is like, oh, you're just an Apple fanboy, you just do all those things. I do like Apple computers. I've been using them, my whole life, basically. Like, my Apple II computer lab in my elementary school, those were the first computers I ever used, all the way up to the time I bought my very first one, which was in January of 2006. It was the Core Duo iMac when those were released, when they first switched to Intel. And I am in the ecosystem. I've got an iPhone, an Apple Watch, an iPad, like all the Apple things. I like them. I like how they work together. I do think that overall Apple is the worst that I've seen it since I've been using it, even though it's more advanced now than it was like 20 years ago. It's also just kind of a mess, and things are not nearly as user-friendly or reliable or just overall enjoyable. Like, the experience is not what it was. And part of that I really do think comes down to, especially when it comes to the Macs, they're trying to come up with new operating systems, new versions of the operating system every single year, and you're never going to get like a finalized revolutionary version of something as complex as a computer operating system every 12 months. So we just end up as users with these crazy, buggy, weird, unfinished experiences that just sort of like throw your workflow in a blender for the sake of change. And it's like, I will say this version of macOS, Sequoia, more like Suckoya, because it sucks. It's the worst version of macOS I've ever used. I absolutely wish I did not upgrade to it. It is awful. The only reason I upgraded to it is because of Final Cut Pro. There were some features that you had to upgrade to use. I use Final Cut Pro as my main editor, and I also have a Final Cut Pro editing course, so I felt like I should really be up to date on these new features. That's why I upgraded, and I wish I didn't, because it is so bad, and it's slightly getting better every time there's new updates, and I'm sure right around the time it gets to be really good and reliable, they'll release a new version that is all full of bugs and terrible again. And I really wish Apple was not on that release schedule, because it just kills the user experience. I swear I went 10 years where Final Cut Pro crashed 2 or 3 times on me, and after installing Sequoia, especially at first, Final Cut was crashing like 2 or 3 times a week. It was incredibly frustrating. It has gotten better since, but like, why? Why do we even have to go down that route? Why couldn't things just keep working the way they were working? And then just other basic stuff like Spotlight search, trying to find applications and stuff, it just doesn't work. I can search for things on my computer that I know are on my computer, files, applications, whatever. It just won't find them until I've opened them up a number of times. So once I know I have Adobe Audition installed on here, it will not find it. Once I go and manually find and open Adobe Audition like 4 or 5 times, then it will start showing up in Spotlight search. So it's just like, that's a feature I use all the time. Being able to quickly search and open things on my computer doesn't work at all. It's so bad. I have no idea why you would mess up something as simple as Spotlight search. Everything just sort of feels a little less efficient, a little less user-friendly, and a little less reliable. All that to say, like, I'm not an Apple zealot where it's like, I would never use a Windows computer. Like, if I had unlimited time and money, building my own PC is something that sounds really fun, but changing an ecosystem, like, it is really nice that I can literally copy something on my phone and paste it on my Mac right away. I can drag a file from my Mac to my phone. So there's, the complaints that I have are the things where it's like, you guys changed this, you made change for the sake of change, and it made things worse just so you could say there's a new version of the operating system or whatever, when you didn't have to do that because you had something that was already really good and really reliable. The reason I share all that is not to just complain, but to just sort of emphasize that I like Apple computers. They're what I choose to use. I don't think they're the only way to go, and I'm definitely not someone who thinks that everything Apple does is perfect and they're just like infallible. I think they are incredibly fallible. The computer itself, the hardware, like 100% perfect, 5 out of 5, no notes. I love everything about how this works. The software is where things it can be good now, and then you update it and it's crazy. So that's where the frustration comes in. I don't know that just getting a Windows computer would fix all that, because I would lose access to Final Cut Pro. I would lose all the connectivity between my other devices. And in the end, I would just be kind of changing one set of problems and complaints for a different set of problems and complaints. So for me, Mac OS, Apple computers, even with a lot of the software imperfections, which are very frustrating, is still the best way for me to go personally. But, you know, I think it's hard to find, just like it's hard to find a bad camera these days, it's pretty hard to find a bad computer too. So all that to say, I have no plans to upgrade this computer. I hope I'm not jinxing myself. The only reason I would upgrade this computer is essentially if something broke that like Apple Care didn't cover. I do have Apple Care on it, which is good peace of mind. Or eventually if it does get to the point where it's like this computer, where even though it works physically and mechanically, it just like can't support anything. It's just totally obsolete. None of the software is supported. Everything runs really slow. But I have a really hard time believing that with the M series processor, that's gonna happen anytime soon. Like I said, this computer's 11 years old. This one's already 3.5 years old. If I can get 5+ years out of a computer, like that is, I have zero complaints there. This one, with the upgrades I did when I bought it, it's about $4,000. By far the most expensive computer I've ever bought. My Mac Mini was, you know, $600. This one, was this $1,200, I think, back in 2014. So this is by far the most expensive computer I've ever had. You can get something that's equally or more powerful now for less money, because everything has advanced, which is super cool. But this is also my main computer for work and everything, so it was a worthwhile investment. It has, you know, paid for itself and paid off many times over since then, and that's also why I want to keep using it. I invested a lot of money in this thing to keep being able to use it for as long as possible, and I just sure hope that they don't take away ports, they don't take away battery and form. I don't want them to mess with the form factor for the sake of change. Change for the sake of change when it comes to this stuff. Never fun. And that's really the other reason I wanted to make this video and sort of share these thoughts, is not just to sort of give you an update on a thing that I was really excited about when I got it a number of years ago, but also because I get asked constantly, especially when new stuff is released and you see all the benchmarks come out and all those, you know, it's just random numbers. This has 28,000 on the benchmark. Okay, cool. That means nothing to me. If you need a new computer, or you just love being up to date on the most cutting edge things, I have friends that a new computer comes out, they keep theirs in perfect condition, they sell it, they use that to fund a new one. They basically always have the newest model because that's fun for them. They like doing that. And if you're somebody who needs an upgrade, you're using a significantly older computer, especially if you're still on any of the Intel Macs, jumping to any M series Mac will make a huge difference. If I needed a new computer today, I would obviously not get the M1. They don't make the M1 anymore, but I wouldn't like seek out an old one or anything. I would get the best that I can get at that time. I guess it'd be an M4 or something at this point. And then I could just use that as long as possible. So always get the best you can get at the time. You know, upgrade as much as your budget will let you, and then you'll probably be fine for a long time. So especially with everything online, when a new computer or something comes out and there's videos and comparisons and, oh my gosh, you know, these benchmarks are slightly incrementally faster than those benchmarks, so that means it's a game changer for everything. Realistically, unless you're coming from something like an Intel Mac to an M series Mac, or, you know, a really old or a really low end computer to a higher end computer, is it really going to make that much of a difference in your workflow? Probably not. If your computer is a decent computer and it just happens to be a couple of years old, it's probably still fine, and you probably don't need to upgrade if you don't want to. But speaking of things I want to do, I want to thank everyone who helps support the channel through YouTube channel memberships. And if you want to know a bit more about these very awesome, very powerful, and in the case of the Mac Mini, very affordable computers, check out these videos right here.